The Lewis model of economic development, or dual sector model itself, is primarily focused on domestic structural transformation within a closed economy, moving surplus labor from a low productivity subsistence sector to a high productivity modern capitalist sector. However, the model has been extended and critiqued to incorporate the realities of international trade in developing economies. The core extensions and implications for trade situations are: 1. Terms of trade between sectors and international trade. The original Lewis model assumes the modern capitalist sector needs to purchase wage goods, typically food, from the subsistence agricultural sector to feed its growing industrial workforce. This creates an internal term of trade relationship. Internal terms of trade. A key potential constraint in the Lewis model is that the expansion of the industrial sector, which draws labor away from agriculture, can reduce the marketed surplus of food, causing a rise in its price, worsen terms of trade for the industrial sector. This rise in the price of food, a key wage good, can force the industrial sector's real wage to rise, squeezing profits and slowing capital accumulation. External trade as a solution/complication. International trade provides an alternative. The industrial sector can import food wage goods. If the developing country, the South, imports food from countries with a comparative advantage in agriculture, the North, it can bypass the domestic agricultural constraint, helping to keep industrial wages low and sustain the profit-led growth process. Export manufactured goods. The growth of the industrial sector naturally leads to the production of goods for export, allowing the country to pay for necessary imports, like food and capital goods. 2. The trade as the engine of growth thesis. Lewis himself later extensively discussed the role of trade as an engine for development, particularly in his 1979 Nobel Prize lecture, The Evolution of the International Economic Order. Comparative advantage in manufacturing. Lewis argued that labor surplus developing countries should logically have a comparative advantage in manufacturing due to their abundant and cheap labor supply. International trade allows this comparative advantage to be exploited. Northern growth drives Southern exports. Lewis's trade engine argument posits that the economic growth and demand in the developed countries North historically served as the primary source of demand for the exports, initially primary goods, later manufactured goods, from the developing countries South, thereby fueling their industrial expansion. Slowdown of the engine. Lewis became pessimistic about this engine's reliability, noting that a slowdown in northern growth and declining terms of trade for primary products could hamper the South's growth potential. He suggested that trade among developing countries could become an alternative engine of growth. 3. The North-South model, Findlay's extension. A significant extension, developed by economist Ronald Findlay, explicitly integrates the Lewis model's dynamics into an international trade framework. Dual economies in a global context. The North-South model assumes the North, developed countries, follows a neoclassical solo swan growth path, while the South, developing countries, follows a Lewis-type dual economy growth path. Labor transfer, profit reinvestment. Labor transfer, profit reinvestment. Specialization. The North typically specializes in high-technology manufactured goods, capital goods, and the South specializes in primary products or in modern interpretations, labor-intensive manufactured goods. Terms of trade and growth. The model shows that the Southern growth rate becomes heavily dependent on the Northern growth rate, particularly through the terms of trade, the ratio of the South's export prices to its import prices. If the South grows too fast relative to the North, its terms of trade may worsen, hindering its long-run growth, a result often linked to dependency theory. 4. Lewis and trade liberalization. The Lewis model provides a theoretical underpinning for certain outcomes associated with trade liberalization and export-led industrialization. Export-led labor absorption. Trade liberalization by removing barriers and encouraging specialization according to comparative advantage, often labor-intensive manufacturing in the early stages, can significantly accelerate the expansion of the modern industrial sector. This accelerates the process of labor absorption from the subsistence sector as envisioned by Lewis. Unlimited labor supply for global market. For a small, open economy, the global market provides a practically unlimited demand for its manufactured exports, complementing the unlimited supply of labor assumed domestically. This allows the industrial sector to grow rapidly without immediately hitting a demand constraint. In summary, while Lewis's original model was domestic, its core mechanism, the profit-led expansion of a capitalist sector fueled by cheap, abundant labor, provides a powerful, structurally focused foundation for understanding how international trade and capital flows can either accelerate this development process by providing markets for goods and a source for capital wage goods imports, or constrain it through adverse terms of trade effects.